Hello everyone, this is part 10 on how to make a shoot 'em up game in Scratch. In this video, I'll be working on the enemy boss plane by adding some bullet patterns and lasers to the boss. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 9 yet, check them out, links are in the description below. Anyways, let's get started. So first off, I drew some images for the enemy boss plane beforehand. The first one is a spike, I just named it Boss Spike, and for the costume, I just drew a triangle. And I'm planning on having the boss plane shoot out the spikes in a pattern. The other sprite that I made is a laser. I just named it Boss Laser, and I have 4 costumes for it. The first one is for when the boss plane is charging the laser, and the other 3 costumes are for when the boss is firing the laser. And for these images, I just drew a red rectangle for the normal laser, and for the firing laser images, I added some lines like these, and used the brush tool to make some swirls like this. But anyways, let's make the boss appear. So let's go to our enemy boss sprite, and then I'm just going to go to events and drag a broadcast message 1 block, and then I'm going to create a new message and call this something like spawn boss. So whenever this message is called, then we want the boss to appear and start attacking. So of course, we want the enemy boss plane to receive the spawn boss. And when it receives this message, let's first go to looks and then make the plane show. And I'm going to also drag a go to front layer just to make sure it appears on top of everything. And I'm also going to drag the set size 125% under the when it receives spawn boss. So I'm just going to click this message. All right, and then here's our boss. And I want this boss to appear from the top of the screen and then slowly come down to somewhere around here. So I'm going to go to motion and then drag a go to XY block. And then I'm going to make this sprite appear in the middle, which is X position 0, and then on the top of the screen. So let's make the Y position a really high number. Let's just say 300. And now if you try it, then the boss appears over here. However, it seems like the enemy boss isn't completely off the screen. And no matter how large I make this Y value, for example, if I type like 1000, then the enemy boss is still not going to go completely off the screen. And this is actually by Scratch design, because they want to make sure that you can be able to see your sprites in this window area if they're shown. However, a way to make the sprites completely off the screen is to first go to looks, and then set the size of my sprite to a really large number. I'm going to say 999%, for example. So that makes the enemy plane really large. And then I'm going to drag the go to XY right after the set size. And lastly, I'm going to drag the set size to the normal size right after the go to XY. And now with this, the enemy boss plane goes completely off the screen. And I think this Y value is way too large. So I'm just going to play around with it and make the boss plane be just off screen. So I'm going to try 200. Okay, 270. All right, that's gone. So I'm going to make it 240. Okay, maybe 260, 255. Okay, so it's barely on screen over here. I think 260 is fine. All right, so now it's just off screen. And now I want the enemy boss plane to slowly come down. And an easy way to do that would be to go to motion and then drag a glide 1 seconds to block. However, in this case, we don't want that because the size hack won't work. And this is a bit complicated to explain, but instead we can just go to control and then drag a repeat. And then we can just go to motion and change Y by, let's say, -1. And this still makes the enemy plane go down, like the glide 1 seconds block. But anyways, I'm just going to do repeat maybe 100. And then while it's going down, we still want to do the size hack to make sure it's appearing from the very edge of the screen. So let's go to looks and then drag a set size to, and then I'm going to set this to 999% right before it changes Y. And then right after, I'm going to set size to its normal size, which is 125%. All right, so now if we try it, then as you can see, the plane appears from the edge of the screen and then comes down slowly. And I think I want it to come down a bit more, so I might increase this to like, let's try 140. And maybe I'm going to change this to negative 1.5. Let's try it out. Oops. I'm going to click this spawn boss. And okay, that was a bit too much, so I'm going to try 100. Let's see. Okay, maybe a bit more, so 110. I think a bit more down, so maybe 120. And alright, I think that looks fine. And now we have the boss appearing. So now that it actually moves into place, we want the boss to do its attacks. So I'm going to go to events and then broadcast a new message. So broadcast new message, and then I'm going to call this boss attack 1. So this is going to be the first type of attack that the boss does. And for this attack, I'm planning on the boss plane to shoot out its spikes and fire lasers. And for this attack, I also want the boss to sort of move left to right slowly. So I'm going to drag a when and receive boss attack 1. So when the boss is doing the first attack, then I'm going to go to control, drag a forever loop, and to make it go left and right, I'm going to first drag a repeat until loop, and then go to operators, and check if the X position, so motion, and then X position, repeat until the X position is less than a certain value. So for the enemy boss plane, I think I'm going to make it move to the left all the way over here. Alright, that's around X negative 100, I think. Yep, X negative 100. So I'm going to make the boss keep going to the left until its X position is less than negative 100. Oops, negative 100. And then inside of this repeat until loop, I'm going to make the boss go to the left. So that is change X by, let's say, negative 1. So if we click this spawn boss, then it appears, and then it broadcasts the boss attack, and then inside of this boss attack, it keeps going left until its X position is less than negative 100. So now once it reaches the left side, we want it to go back to the right side. So we can just right-click duplicate this block, and then right after, we repeat until its X position is greater than positive 100. So I'm going to drag this inside of here. Then the plane is going to change X by positive 1. Alright, so if we try it, so spawn boss, it comes down, and then it should move left to right. And it does, alright. And then once it goes to the right side, it should move back. And alright, cool. And by the way, in your enemy boss plane costume, make sure it's perfectly centered. So I'm just going to check. Okay, there we go. And that should be better. But anyways, now we have the boss movement down, and now we can actually start with the attacks. So let's first do the code for the boss spike. So let's go to the sprite, and then first off, I'm going to drag a when flag clicked, and then I'm going to hide the main sprite. And I'm going to only make the clones of the sprite show. So first off, to make spikes shoot out when the boss does its attack, we want to go to events, and then drag a when and receive boss attack 1. Then we are going to spawn some bullets. And for the bullets, I'm going to have bullets spawning from here, and here, and here, and like 2 more on the edge over here. So to do that, I'm going to go to my blocks, and then create a new block, and I'm going to call this spawn bullet. And then for this, I'm going to add a number input, and then I'm going to call this direction, and I'm going to add a label just so that I know this number input is the direction. And then I'm going to add another number input, and then I'm going to call this X, and then I'm going to add a label, call it X, and then one more number input, call this Y, and a label, and call this Y. Now let's click OK. And then we're going to use this block to spawn the bullets. So these right here, the direction X and Y, are our variables. And we can use these variables inside this block to customize the bullets. So first off, when a bullet is spawned from the enemy boss plane, we are going to go to motion and then point in direction of the direction variable. So whatever number we make this direction variable, it's going to point in direction of that number. And then we also want the bullet to spawn on the boss. So let's drag a go to XY block, and then let's go to sensing, and I'm going to drag a backdrop number of stage block, and then I'm going to change this sprite from the stage to the enemy boss, and make sure you change the right side of this block, not the left side. So now we have the X position of enemy boss, and then when the bullet is spawned, I'm going to make it go to the X position of enemy boss plus the X variable, and then that's going to be our X position. And then for the Y position, we can just duplicate, so right click duplicate, and then drag this in the Y, but change this to Y position of enemy boss plus Y. Alright, cool. And with this go to XY block, we can make the bullets spawn anywhere based on the boss position. For example, if we want to make the bullet spawn a bit to the right of the boss, we can just make this X position like 100 or something, and then the bullet would just spawn in the X position of the enemy boss plus 100. So yeah, and then after it points in direction and then goes to XY, we want to create the bullet clone. So go to control and then drag a create clone of myself. Alright, so this block sets the direction and the position of the bullet before it shoots out. However, after it shoots out, then we just want it to move forward. So let's drag a WinSR as a clone. Then let's go to looks, and then first show the bullet. And then I'm going to drag a forever loop, and I'm going to go to motion, and then drag a move 10 steps. And then I'll make it like move 5 steps or something. And with the bullets, I'm going to also do the size hack, like the one I explained earlier. So I'm going to go to looks, and then I'm going to set the bullet size to 999% right before it moves 5 steps, and then set its size back to 100% right after. And this makes the bullets be able to go off screen completely. And then I'm also going to add an if statement. So I'm going to check if the Y position of the bullet is less than the position at the bottom of the screen. So I'm just going to say something like negative 190. Then we want to delete the bullet clone. So let's go to control and then drag a delete this clone. Alright, and I'm going to drag this right before the set size to 100%. But anyways, that should be fine for the bullet movement. And now we actually want to use these blocks that spawn the bullets. So when the boss is doing its first attack, let's first drag a repeat loop. And then I'm going to go to my blocks and drag this spawn bullet block. Alright, so here we have 3 places to put our numbers. The first one is the direction, the second one is the X position, and the third one is the Y position. So I believe if we want to make the bullet point downwards, it should be 180 degrees. And by the way, this is going to be the boss's first bullet, which is going to spawn over here and then come straight down like this. So yeah. And for the X and Y positions, it's a bit hard to estimate. However, what we can do is go to looks and then show the real bullet sprite. And then I'm just going to make it go to 0, 0. Alright, so here's our spike right here. And then I'm just going to copy this go to XY block. And then we can just use this block to check where we want to spawn our bullets. So let's first remove this X and Y variables. Alright, and now our first bullet spawned is going to point in direction 180. Let's just try it out. So 180, okay, let me make it go to 0, 0. Alright, so here's our first bullet. And then next, we want to know where it goes for the X and Y position. So to do that, we can just put in numbers in here and then play around with the values. So if I add nothing in here, the bullet's going to go right in the middle of the boss plane. So the bullet should be right here right now. And I think it's not showing because the enemy boss plane is above the bullet, but that's fine. Since I want the bullet to spawn over here, we can just make it go down lower. So of course that's a negative number added to the Y position of the enemy boss. So let's try something like negative 100. Then let's click this block. Okay, as you can see, the spike came down a bit, but I want it to go up a bit, so let's try negative 70. Okay, that's much better. Maybe negative 65. Alright, cool. So we can't see the spike right now, but it should be right here. And now that we know we want the spike to spawn at 0, negative 65, we can just type in 0 and negative 65 for the X and Y. Alright, cool. So I'm going to do the same for the rest of my 4 bullets by just changing the values in the go to X and Y, and then typing in the numbers inside of this spawn bullet block. Alright, cool. So now I'm done with all of my 5 bullets. And if I just click this right here, then as you can see, there's the 5 bullets that spawn from the enemy plane. And by the way, one important thing to note is that make sure your bullet sprite is facing towards the right. And that way it's going to point in the right direction when it's spawned. But anyways, now I think I'm going to add a wait right after all of the bullets are spawned. So I'm going to try something like wait 0.4 seconds. And now if I try it out, as you can see, there are the 5 bullets shooting all at once. Alright, cool. So now I think we have the bullets down. Let's see. Now let's go back to the enemy boss plane and then try it out with the bullets. So I'm going to click this broadcast spawn boss, and then it's going to appear and move while shooting the bullets. Alright, cool. So as you can see, this is our first boss attack. And just for right now, I'm going to go to the boss spike and then change this repeat 10 into a forever loop. Alright, so let's try it again. Spawn boss. And then when it shows, then as you can see, it shoots the bullets while moving. And of course, the bullets spawn from the boss. Alright, cool. So now that we finished with the spikes, we can now start working on the laser. So I'm going to go to the boss laser sprite. And for the laser sprite, I'm sort of planning on having the lasers point towards the player plane while charging up. And then once the lasers are charged, they're going to freeze and then shoot. So I think I'm going to have 2 lasers spawning from here and here. So I'm going to first go to events and then drag a when flag clicked. And then I'm going to go to looks and hide the original sprite. So we're only going to be creating clones similar to the boss spikes. And now I'm going to go to events and then drag a when I receive boss attack 1. And by the way, these lasers are going to be firing at the same time while the boss spikes are shooting. So we're also going to use boss attack 1. Then I'm going to create a variable. And I'm just going to call this, let's just say laser clone. Okay. And then I'm going to select for the sprite only. And then I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to have a left and right laser. So under the when I receive boss attack, I'm going to set the laser clone to, let's say, left. And then I'm going to go to control and then create a clone of myself. And then I'm going to right click duplicate these 2 blocks. And I'm going to set the laser clone to right. And now, since the laser clone is set to for the sprite only, we have 2 clones of the lasers. And one of them is with the laser clone variable set to left, while the other one is with the laser clone variable set to right. So now that we have 2 different clones, I'm going to drag a when I start as a clone, and I'm going to drag a forever loop, and then I want the left laser to always go right here, no matter where the enemy boss plane is positioned. And for the right laser, I want it to always go over here. So I'm going to drag an if else, and then I want to check if the laser clone is equal to left. Then I'm going to go to the X position and Y position of the enemy boss plane, plus some values. However, one thing before I forget is that inside of the costumes, the images can't be centered in the middle. I'm going to have to move them so that the left edge of the image starts in the middle of the drawing area. As you can see, there's a circle and a plus, and that's the crosshair, or the center of the drawing area. So I'm just going to move the left edge right in the middle right here. And I'll explain why this is important later, but for right now, for all the costumes, I'm going to select the entire thing and then move it so that it's right in the center of the drawing area based on the left side. Alright, cool. And then for this costume, I'm going to do the same thing. So the left side of it is centered in the middle, like this. Alright, and then for the last one, I'm going to do the same thing, like so. Alright, cool. So that's not going to change much currently, but for right now, let's just set the positions of the lasers. So I'm going to go to motion, and then I'm going to drag a go to XY, and I'm going to first show the laser sprite. Alright, and since I want this edge to go right over here, then I'm just going to drag this right here, and then that is X position negative 100, and then Y position positive 100. However, we also have to add or subtract the position of the enemy plane. So let's go to sensing, and then drag a backdrop number of stage block, and then change the stage to enemy boss. Alright, and then let's go to operators, and let's drag a minus operator. So X position of enemy boss, and then we have 100. So the left laser is going to go to the X position of the enemy boss minus 100. Alright, and then I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to grab a plus and change the X position to Y position of the enemy boss. And for now, let's just make it plus 100 and then drag it back. Alright, so if I just bring this block out and then click on it, okay, so it seems like the position of the laser is a bit off. So I'm going to change this to like Y position plus 50. Alright, maybe 40. Maybe 30 or 20. Alright, cool, that's fine. And by the way, I'm basing the position of the laser by the left edge right here. And that's because I centered all of my laser costumes based on this left edge. So yeah, but anyways, the left laser is going to spawn right here. So negative 100 and then plus 20. Alright, if the laser clone is not the left laser clone, then it's the right laser clone. So I'm going to duplicate this, and then I want it to go right here. And that should be X position of enemy boss plus 100. So I'm going to drag a plus operator and then type in 100 right here. Alright, and then for the Y position, it should be the same as the left laser clone. And now we should be fine for the positioning. However, now we want the lasers to actually fire. So to do that, I'm going to first create a custom block. So I'm going to create a new one, and then name this something like show and fire. Alright, and then click OK. And now for our show and fire block, of course, I'm going to first make the lasers show. So go to looks and then drag a show block. And I think I want these lasers to appear behind the enemy plane. So I'm going to drag a go to front layer and then change it to back. And I want the lasers to start off with this costume. So this is the normal charging costume. So I'm going to drag a switch costume to normal. And I think I'm going to have these lasers be a bit larger, so maybe like 200%. Let me try. Okay, I think that's a bit too large, so 175. Alright, cool. I think that's fine. And then for these lasers, I think I'm going to have them slowly fade in. And that means that they're charging. So I'm going to drag a set color effect and then change this to set ghost effect. And by the way, the ghost effect is the transparency. So if I set this to 100, that means that the laser is completely see-through. And then I'm going to go to control and drag a repeat. And I'm just going to repeat like 50 times. And then I am going to change the ghost effect by -1. Alright, so let's try it out. And as you can see, That just means that by changing the ghost effect, the lasers slowly become less and less see-through. And I also want these lasers to point towards the player plane, so I'm going to go to motion and then drag a point towards player plane. Alright, so let's try it. Alright, cool. And as you can see, the lasers point towards the player plane. And by the way, this is the reason why I centered all of the left side of the laser images in the middle. Because if this laser image were to be centered perfectly in the center like this, then it wouldn't exactly point towards the player plane in the correct way. So yeah, I'm going to center the laser images like this. And then let's see. I think I'm going to go to control and then drag a wait and maybe something like 0.5 seconds. And then I'm going to make the laser have a ghost effect of 0. So that means it is completely not see-through. As you can see, it charges and then becomes 0. All right. And then I'm going to do the firing animation. So I'm going to go to control and then drag a repeat loop. And then I'm going to make it constantly switch through these 3 costumes. So I'm going to go to looks and then drag a switch costume to fired 1. And then I'm going to wait 0.03 seconds. And then I'm going to duplicate this, switch costume to fired 2. And then duplicate one more time, switch costume to fired 3. Alright, cool. So let's try it out. So it fades in, waits, and then does the firing. Alright, cool. And it should point towards the player plane, like so. So if we try it, point towards it, alright, and then it waits, and then fires. Alright, so before we test it in the actual game, I'm going to check if the left side works by first hiding this original sprite, and then broadcasting the boss attack, which spawns the laser clones. So I'm going to click this, and then the lasers should have positioned themselves to the enemy boss. However, now I have to actually run this show and fired block. So for this block, I'm going to drag a when I start as a clone, then forever, show and fire. Alright, cool. Now I think all of the attacks should be fine. So now I'm going to test it in the real game. So I'm going to first disable the blocks spawning the mini enemy planes. So I'm going to take this out and also take this one out. Alright, and I think I'm going to drag a when flag clicked and make it broadcast spawn boss. So now if we try it out, then as you can see, there's our boss. By the way, we can't hit it yet, but anyways, here are the boss attacks, and it works. Alright, cool. So as you can see, there's the spikes shooting in 5 directions, and then here are the lasers, and the lasers are sort of targeting the player until they fire, and then they shoot like that. Alright, nice. So here is the first phase of the enemy boss attack. Alright, cool. And the boss is moving left to right slowly. Alright, nice. And I think I might make the boss bullets move a bit faster. Let me try it again. Yeah, I think they're a bit hard to dodge, so if they were a bit faster, then I think there would be more gap in between the bullets. So I'm going to go inside of the boss spike sprite, and then when the clones are created, I'm going to make them move maybe 7 steps and make the enemy boss plane spawn the bullets every 0.5 seconds. Alright, so let's try it again. So the boss enters, and then it does its attacks. Alright, cool. As you can see, there's the spikes, and then there are the lasers. Alright. And yeah. However, of course, we don't have our boss plane fully in the game yet, because right now, I'm just broadcasting the spawn boss message once the flag is clicked. Also, you can't deal damage or take damage, but I'll be working on that in the next video. But for right now, we have the boss's first attack done. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too, if you haven't already. In the next video, I'll be actually adding the enemy boss plane with the other enemy planes, because right now I just have the boss battle by itself. By the way, I shared this project on my Scratch profile, so check it out. Link is in the description below. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. See ya!